Jeff Sachs in Rome, so glad to find you. I must say, among all the wise people commenting on this world situation, I honor you especially, Jeff, for being relentless on the dangers out there. Going back to the Biden years, you have worn your dread on your face and in your voice, no matter that people get tired of it. And you're very specific about the risks of nuclear escalation for one, about grave economic damage in the rise of the BRICS, alternatives to the trading nations, the old imperial remnant, but also about sleepwalking into World War III. I'd love to hear your priorities on your dread list today.
Chris, good to be with you. In these days, we need to see friends.
Thank you. 40 years and some, Jeff.
Indeed. We're in the hands of a madman and in the hands of a mad system. The United States has been a relentless war machine for decades, and we have a psychologically debilitated person on top, very seriously impaired person. And the combination is absolutely as dangerous as can be. This is the most dangerous period in modern world history.
And our madman could be in the hands of another one.
As the psychiatrists say, we have two megalomaniacs and deluded people playing against each other, Bibi and Emperor Donald. They've gone off to an absolutely mad war of choice that can really destabilize the whole world. And it's on that path right now. With Donald Trump saying that he's going to choose the next supreme leader of Iran and that there will be unconditional surrender and a normalization of this in our political system. The man's clearly deranged. He's not just a different point of view. What he says by the hour and the day is delusional. It reeks of megalomania and narcissism and psychopathy, actually, a complete, obvious lack of care of who's dying, who's suffering. But saying all of that, that could happen. But the fact that our political system says, yeah, that's normal. The fact that our Congress says, yeah, that's not our business. The fact that the Senate can't seem to rouse themselves to look at the Constitution to understand that it is damn well their business is another part of this story. And that, Chris, goes back a long time. This has been a militarized state for decades, one that goes to war on choice, on absolutely illegal and phony pretenses, and in the hands of the CIA and Donald Trump, we're completely out of control right now. And Mossad, let's add Mossad to that.
And there are blatant inconsistencies right on the top of the story. For example, that President Trump is the one who pulled the United States out of the JCPOA, which would have shut down all progress on an Iranian nuclear weapon.
But Chris, just to dwell on that for a moment, this is not about Iran's nuclear weapons. But I think it's important to say, Iran's supreme leader that said repeatedly for decades that it is against Islam to have nuclear weapons and that Iran would not, that's the one that they killed the first moment. That's not exactly prudent or logical. Iran is the one that signed repeatedly onto agreements for strict monitoring by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Iran signed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, as you said, a decade ago. It was Donald Trump and Bibi and Miriam Adelson's request that ripped it up in 2018. This has never been about the nuclear weapons. This is about American global hegemony and Israel's hegemony in the Middle East. This is about Palestine. This is about the madness of Bibi Netanyahu and Smotrich and Gvir, who are fascists to the core, that Israel can dominate any place it wants, kill any people it wants, expel any people it wants. That's what this is about. Israel wants the full prerogative to do whatever crimes it wants to do in the name of its God, and that is what this is about. And then you have cheerleaders like Ambassador Mike Huckabee, who says, sure, that's Genesis 15. You can't make this stuff up as we go merrily off to World War III. And I don't know about you, but I get some emails saying, Mr. Sachs, it's written in the scriptures. We're at the end times. I don't want to be at end times for my children and grandchildren. I want us to survive. I don't want to hear that from an American ambassador. When he said it, that Israel can do what it wants and go where it wants in the Middle East, normally he would have been fired that moment. Not only wasn't he fired, there was no doubt backslapping and high fives at the White House and, of course, in the Israeli capital. This is the madness that we're in. This is not normal. This is not about policy. This is insanity at this point.
It doesn't feel American either. We're number one is one thing, but suddenly we're clearly being led by the nose by Bibi Netanyahu.
Yes, although I would say that Mossad and the CIA have been joined at the hip for decades, and Mossad and the CIA were almost surely together in the original conspiracy for Israel to get the atomic bomb over the objections of President Kennedy. Mossad and the CIA are both murder incorporated. They've been at this a long time. I do, of course, blame Israel, but I also blame the United States. I think it is a folie à deux. I think it is two mad systems, two completely militaristic systems, two megalomaniacal leaders, two intelligence agencies that murder for a living that we're observing here. Yes, Israel thinks only at the regional scale. According to Huckabee, it's from the Nile to the Euphrates. The United States thinks at the global scale. Donald Trump thinks he runs the world right now. He really does think that.
He thinks he runs Iran the way he runs Venezuela. But let me ask you, Jeff, where are the others? The United Nations, for example, but also Russia, China. They have other global powers have barely spoken yet. Who's to call attention to the united voice out there?
So when you try to do a tour of the horizon, the Americas are still in shock at a president being kidnapped and exfiltrated to the United States. And Trump every day says he's about to do the same with Cuba. And he's starving Cuba before our eyes, not a peep in the public or even awareness of it. But he's put on a war blockade against Cuba. And so far it's holding. And the island will shut down. And Trump says it's going to fall into our hands any moment. About half of Latin America's presidents are extreme right, many of them brought in by Trump himself through his hand on the scales, whether it's elections or ballot counting or other means. So the Americas are shell-shocked and quiet right now. Europe is a vassal region. It's a complicated story. There's a basic theorem that I have, which is if you have a U.S. military base on your country, you're an occupied country, actually. You also have the CIA operating directly in your country, and the U.S. will make sure that that base is going nowhere and that the only politicians that are allowed to rise are the ones that are favorable to the United States. So Europe is without a voice at all.
Can you explain why, Jeff?
Yes.
Who swallowed the European interest here?
The Europeans used to have some personalities of stature. They're all gone right now. I know many of these leaders. Some of them, by the way, 10 or 15 years ago were very different from what they are right now. Whether they're terrified, whether they're bought out, whether it is the dynamic of their crazy Russophobia, it's not totally clear to me. But who is speaking in Europe? There's one leader right now, one and only one, and that's the Spanish president, Pedro Sanchez, sometimes called president, sometimes called prime minister, by the way, but just to say, Presidente Pedro Sanchez is the only leader. The rest are pathetic. By the way, they have no public approval either. So this isn't about the European public. Just like in the United States, this war has nothing to do with the American people who are dead set against it. This is about small elites. And essentially, the European political elite has been suborned by the United States. Sometimes the US aimed to overthrow leaders that it didn't like. In occasional cases, like Olof Palme in Sweden, the security services murdered him the same way that they did John F. Kennedy earlier. So leaders that get out of line get taken out. And this is a surmise, of course, because they don't exactly publish the data, but the evidence is very, very strong. And the circumstances in Europe are that generally these leaders have come up through the ranks by being fellows at the Atlantic Council and having their fellowships paid for by the German Marshall Fund and all the institutions that make sure that there's a subservience to the United States. But they also fear that Russia's about to invade them, which is the last thing that's actually going to happen, or they say they fear that. And so all in all, Europe is dead, with the exception of the Spanish president. Then Russia's in a war against the United States and Europe, pretty active war. No doubt is giving some military support to Iran. There's no doubt about that. Some intelligence, probably some anti-missile defenses and so on. But it doesn't have a lot to spare because it's been fighting a war against NATO for 4 years in Ukraine. China is, of course, aghast at what is happening. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing. I would suppose that they are providing logistical and financial support to Iran, but they're quiet about it. And most of the rest of the world is afraid. Some are linked to the US military directly or even to Israeli security. Some just don't want to put their necks out right now. It's terrible. It's dreadful. It's the emperor not only has no clothes, but he's out of his mind. But nobody will say it, not in the United States political system and not internationally.
We feel this terrible air. Jeff Sachs, let me just say, I've been learning from your travels for 40 years now, going back to hyperinflation in Bolivia, if you can remember those dear old days. You travel more widely, and I think you get more respect out there than our Secretary of State.
Oh, God, I hope so. Excuse me.
You go to China more often than I go to the barbershop. What are people saying? People who know you well, who share your cosmopolitan concern. What's the truth of the conversation out there?
Oh, the truth is everybody's scared. Everybody's a bit bewildered. No one knows what to do. And generally, people took the idea that sucking up to Trump was the national interest if you're a politician. You don't want to get hammered with tariffs. You don't want to get hit with sanctions. You want to get NVIDIA chips. You don't want to have an IMF program if you need it turned down. So there's a lot of institutional power of the United States, and if it's used in a bloody-minded way, and I think that there's up until now, up until a few days ago, so I think the calculations are no doubt changing, Chris, but if you're playing the long game, China's winning the long game, no question, hands down. And winning, by the way, I want to explain, I'm a Sinophile. I have no problem with that. I just mean that they're being successful in the long game. I'm not against China at all. Quite the contrary. I find very impressive what they're doing. But when I say that they're winning the long game, who produces the world's electric vehicles? Who produces the world's green energy of the future? Who is producing the open source AI that's being used all over the world? Who is the low-cost manufacturing power in the world? Well, it's China, and the lead is widening. And the reason, basically, is that China hasn't gone to war for decades. It's kept its nose down and has worked like hell, invested like hell, been smart. This week, they released the 15th plan. another remarkable document that the United States wouldn't even know how to produce if it had to right now. But this is actually a tour of the complex Chinese economy and how they're going to continue to excel at the cutting edge of technology across many sectors, something that we don't do in the United States. And we don't produce things. We may produce good ideas, but then they are actually manufactured in Taiwan or in Korea or in Japan, not in the United States. So China is being extremely effective, but the United States has just stepped up war, maybe World War III. China doesn't want war. China actually wants peace. China is not militaristic. China hasn't been at war one day since 1980. Yes, there are a couple border skirmishes that it has. But other than that, they don't want war. So, in this sense, Chris, I think my guess is that they're looking at this situation as something actually new because Donald Trump flipped his lid at the beginning of this year. Some cog came loose. And now he wants to be at war everywhere. Maybe it's his messianic urges. Maybe it's his age. Maybe it's, I don't know what else might have gone on in his brain or in his life or something else, but something flipped. And the world isn't really yet adjusted to this. Half the world is vassal states of the US because we have military bases in 80 countries, Chris. We have CIA operating all over the world, ready to take out leaders, kill people. Yeah, so people are cautious about that. But the other half is also a bit shocked at this. When Trump came in, the Russian leaders thought that he was going to negotiate. He doesn't negotiate. He can't negotiate. He's mentally incapable of negotiating because whatever's said one day is reversed the next day. It's really weird, but it's not normal even from a thuggish point of view. A gangster has more consistency. There's no consistency here.
In a big world, there are also live wires. The Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Carney, could be one of them. He says that the American global world order is by now a dead letter and a fake. There must be others who, even in private conversation, can cut through it. Even as Henry Kissinger did in a line you like to quote, that to be the enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be the friend of the United States is fatal.
Exactly.
Certain people are hedging against that fear. What can they do? And who out there is going to say this is precisely the sort of crisis for which the United Nations was designed and get them on the case?
That's not going to happen as it should right now. I attended the UN Security Council meeting last Sunday, a week ago. It truly was a dreadful, dreadful affair, Chris, because one European country after another, on the day that Iran was attacked brazenly by Israel and the United States, one European country after another attacked Iran, blamed Iran, talked about the horrible Iranian regime. No European country stood up for the UN Charter. I marveled at the cynicism and foolishness and pusillanimity, I guess it is, and moral bankruptcy of these people. The Danish ambassador especially shocked me because Denmark is fending off another U.S. invasion, that one of Greenland. That's going to come. It's going to come one day. American troops are going to land, and Donald Trump will say that's an American security need, and Denmark's going to say that's just fine. So right now, Denmark's trying to fend off that invasion. So you might think that the Danish government would have some interest in defending the UN Charter, which is crystal clear. No country can attack another country except in self-defense in an armed attack. That's Article 51 of the UN Charter. Article 2 of the UN Charter simply says that no country can threaten force or use force against another sovereign state. Very straightforward, very simple. You know, the Danish ambassador could not even utter the sentence that the United States and Israel had attacked Iran. Her whole speech was an attack on Iran, on what a despicable regime it is and how it has fired on its neighbors without mentioning even once that the United States and Israel had launched an unprovoked attack on Iran. I went up to her afterwards to try to have a word. She looked at me and she turned her back and walked away.
Wow.
I said, "Excuse me, might I have a word with you?" And she said, "No," and walked away. They don't want to talk. The situation is, whether it's fear, it is fear in some way, but it's really a state of affairs the likes of which I can't recall in my decades of work at and around the United Nations. Europe won't say a word, and dozens of other countries dare not speak against the Mad Emperor. And it's very, very worrisome.
Meantime, Jeff, another NATO country, Turkey, is close to the front lines of this fighting with Iran, and it also shares interest, anxiety about Kurdistan, Kurdish population. And the word comes out of somewhere in Israel that Turkey better understand that
Is next.
it's the next Iran.
That's right.
So where does one go from there? Where does Turkey go?
I know, and I like President Erdogan a lot. He's a regional leader that reflects actually centuries of Turkish Ottoman diplomacy in the region. And he has often spoken well and articulately and in a leadership way about the need for a state of Palestine. But he is also under the gun financially. And I am sure that Turkey is worried about the United States deliberately trying to sabotage the Turkish economy. One of the statements that was made a few weeks ago that, as usual, got almost no notice in the US media was a remarkable statement made by our financial thug in chief, Scott Bessent, otherwise known as our Treasury Secretary, in Davos in an interview on Fox Business. He was asked about the sanctions on Iran. And he explained quite straightforwardly that early in 2025, Trump decided to crush the Iranian economy and to destroy the value of the currency. And so the Treasury under Bessent put on a range of sanctions to break the economy. Basically, banks all over the world were warned, don't make any deals with Iran, even to repay the oil that they export. So
Wow.
Iran would export oil, but then not get paid. And Bessent said, well, the idea was to lead to banking and currency collapse, to lead to extreme economic hardship, plunging of the currency, so that people would come out onto the streets. And then Bessent said, this is called economic statecraft. And he said, it's going very well.
My word.
Yes, and he said this so openly, it reminded me of Nazi language, I have to tell you. I'm sorry to use the analogy, but the brazenness, the boastfulness of destruction is what we're hearing right now. Trump says it every day. We will destroy Iran. Israel says, we'll kill the next leader, whoever it is. We have not heard this kind of language since World War II. We've had wars, but the vulgarity, the violence of it is something we have not heard. And the open bragging about the damage that you do to others, we have never heard from our government in this way. Our government's made so many crimes, we could spend a whole season discussing them.
Right.
But it hasn't bragged about all of the deaths and destruction and the overthrows. It used to have the manners to hide that. These were covert regime change operations. Now it's on Truth Social. We're going to destroy you. I'm going to pick your next leader. We're going to kill your next leader, and so on. This is a kind of language of brute power that we have not heard before. These are two deranged countries, or two deranged governments, let me say, the United States and Israel, extraordinarily violent, extraordinarily dangerous, extraordinarily rogue from the standards of international law. And they just keep pressing, and they're going to hit a tripwire, and we're all going to be sorry at some moment when the wrong tripwire is hit.
We surely will be. But Jeff, I'm scanning the horizon for souls like your own who've been at this game for a large part of distinguished careers, who are brave enough to speak out and tell the truth. Where in the United Nations is the statesman who can stand up at this point and say, world, we've ignored Gaza, we've ignored all sorts of dangers and evil doing, even in recent years, but this is the moment to speak. This is the moment to change the level of seriousness in this conversation.
We're not hearing it. It's not that we're theorizing something bad will happen. We've just had a genocide in Gaza. In many ways, it's continuing. Probably 200,000 or 300,000 innocents have been killed, but that's already passed as well. That already doesn't have any notice. Mr. Netanyahu, who was the lead agent of that and under indictment from the ICC, the International Criminal Court, well, he sits on the board of peace. It's a bizarre world. It's out Orwellian Orwell. It's something, again, from my point of view, Chris, we've been through Vietnam, and you reported that brilliantly and bravely, and we've been through Iraq on a number of occasions. We've been through so many things. This one feels worse to me right now. It's not worse in its duration, and God help us if that happens, but it's worse in the open delight in murder and mayhem.
It's reached a point of simple scariness, Jeff, that I think justifies a leap of faith, a leap of straightforward, simple language about killing and murder of children and innocents and deprived nations. I mean, the whole story is ready for a fresh understanding and a fresh spokesman. It's been you in lots of ways, going back as far as I can remember in public life.
Chris, just to say about me, the experience that I have is that I speak to people in other countries. That's my life, my professional life. And I speak to the leaders in these countries.
Yes?
And they say that they want peace. And I'm not naive. We talk about details. And that was true going back to Gorbachev and to Yeltsin and to President Kuchma in Ukraine and to presidents that followed in Ukraine and to Russian leaders. I know these people. I know the European leaders. I know people all over the world. I know the Iranian president and have had 2 meetings with him in the last 2 years. Both meetings, he spent the whole meeting talking about peace and the fact that as a heart surgeon, he doesn't care who's on the operating table. His job is to save their life.
That's the voice we need. This is Kazeshkian.
Yes. Do you think that was reported once? No. Do you think that any of our mainstream media would dare to say a word that wasn't venomous about the Iranians? No. When the Iranian foreign minister, Araghchi, gave a speech in Doha, I think it was February 7th, after Marco Rubio said, oh, we need to talk about a lot of things. Well, the Iranian foreign minister talked about a lot of things about how to make peace in the Middle East. An absolutely clear, persuasive, negotiable set of ideas. Was it even mentioned in the New York Times? No, it was not. Did I try? Yes, of course. I talked to their diplomatic and foreign policy correspondents. Nah, nothing interesting here. We're in absolutely this tunnel that we don't want to hear. There's no discussion. We don't want to know about the outside world. We just want to have our president bomb them. We want to have Israel take them over. This is the world that we're in.
I disagree at my risk, but people I see on the street, people I read about in the polls too, are very apprehensive about this situation.
Oh,
And
I
they're,
agree. I'm not blaming the American people. I'm blaming the power structure in this country. You ask me who else is speaking? Who in the United States is speaking? In the Congress?
I grant you, in the Senate, name one friend of China in the U.S. Senate. This is unbelievable.
One person who knows, one person who visits a very important country of 1.4 billion people,
Yeah.
who talks to the other side. It's absolutely bizarre, but more than bizarre, it's extraordinarily dangerous.
I know lots of people who would say China is, among other things, it's the one nation out there that has the interest, has the science, has the political impulse, and the finances to do something serious about another enormous challenge to the planet, and that is global warming.
Absolutely. It's going to be the country that, if we save ourselves and don't have a nuclear war in between, it's going to be the country that makes possible the transformation to a green economy. Because the US doesn't even try, quite the opposite. Drill, baby, drill is our energy policy, whereas China has mastered electric vehicles, it's mastered photovoltaics, it's mastered very advanced wind turbines, it's mastered the hydrogen economy. It's making a huge transformation. Quite interesting, very positive. In the meantime, the United States pulled out of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, trashed all the Environmental Protection Agency standards, abandoned midway renewable energy projects, abandoned electric vehicles. These are absolutely taking America back, well, to the 20th century, certainly, but the rate Trump is going to the 19th century or to the Stone Age if we're really unlucky.
Jeff, I'd love to make America great again, restoring precisely that initiative, that science, that can do spirit that you and I knew early in our public careers, so to speak. I asked myself, what can I do? And I thought, well, I can call Jeff Sachs for one thing, but who are the others? Including the Secretary General of the UN, Mr. Guterres. He sounds promising and on the right track when I hear from him, but it's not often and it's not bold enough. Who's out there and who's got to be enlisted?
Yeah, we're going to find out because the situation's going to get worse before it gets better. And we're going to need voices all over the world to say stop before we go over the cliff together.
Does the Pope count? Does the Dalai Lama count?
The Pope is a wonderful, beautiful person who speaks of peace and understands it. And he's issued a statement recently saying that this war can lead nowhere but disaster and we need peace. He's a beautiful man of peace. The Grand Imam of Al-Azhar is a great man of peace. We have religious leaders around the world, but we have a absolutely hyper militarized state that Dwight Eisenhower warned us about in 1961. And the older I get, the more I understand that Eisenhower's farewell address was not a warning about the future. It was a statement about what had already happened. The United States Republic had ended. Eisenhower was trying to tell us that. When Kennedy tried to maintain the Republic and promote peace, the CIA did him in. And I don't think any president since then has really tried. So we're in a very bad way. We don't have leaders right now in Washington, almost any. I like Rand Paul. I like Congressman Massey. They at least try to, I mean, they do tell the truth and they try to speak their mind and they're not beholden to this recklessness that we call our government, but they're very few. And on the Democratic side, I'm afraid the party got ruined, just ruined. And Biden was, of course, we don't even have to go back and visit it, but he was a man of confrontation as well. So we're waiting for leaders, either party.
Any party, no party.
Stand up for peace. That's what we need.
I love Mayor Mamdani, who comes from a brilliant family.
Absolutely.
With a global consciousness born into him and an incredible gift for straight talk on YouTube videos that he makes himself. I mean, this is a marvel.
Absolutely. So no doubt there are people, Chris, we need a new generation of young politicians like Zoran to come to the fore and talk about peace. The American people absolutely do not want what is happening right now. The American people support overwhelmingly a Palestinian state. The American people overwhelmingly object to a war that they weren't asked about for one moment. So this is a runaway government, and our hope is to retake our government and to reestablish constitutional rule. But it may mean just clearing out all of these politicians of the past who have been in the military-industrial complex, starting with the young group that is ready for peace and that is ready to talk to people in other places in the world, not just shoot at them and bomb them.
Jeff Sachs, I cannot thank you enough. I want to just say, though, that I'm hearing in you the optimism of my own youth. President Kennedy addressed my college graduation. Anything was possible.
You're lucky.
Lucky, but those were Native American common ambitions, ideals, plans, hopes, and you embody the range of accomplishment that's possible. We got to find the others. Find them again.
Well, you and I had the good fortune to live when President Kennedy was president. He was the last good president of the United States by my count.
I disagree with you a little bit on that, but
yeah.
These are...
We could go through the scorecard at another time. I'd be delighted to do it. But just to say, Kennedy was a great man. Franklin Roosevelt was a great man, and that's what we need again. Chris, I have a call coming in, so I'm going to take that.
Jeff Sachs, keep doing exactly what you're doing. We'll talk again soon.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jeffrey Sachs is a development economist, a freewheeling advisor for decades now to the Secretary General of the United Nations and to nations and leaders around the world. Here at Open Source, we count on listener support. If you haven't done your part yet, please go now to radioopensource.org/donate and pitch in to keep the world's first and longest running podcast going strong. We're proud to be a founding member of Hub and Spoke, a Boston-based collective of independent voices in podcasting. Check the range of our interests, art to technology to politics and history, at hubspokeaudio.org. You'll be glad you did. And thank you.